According to classical Marxism, the proletariat were natural enemies of capitalism. Lenin added to this the idea that imperialism was the result of capitalist struggle for the conquest of new markets. The inevitable conclusion was that the proletariat were also enemies of imperialism and would refuse to serve it in a widespread imperialist conflict. More attached to their class interests than those of their imperialist bosses, they would evade recruitment or use their weapons to overthrow capitalism instead of fighting against their fellow proletarians from neighboring nations. In 1914, this syllogism seemed certain to all Marxist intellectuals. So, imagine their surprise when the proletariat embraced patriotic preaching, enlisting massively and bravely fighting on the battlefields for imperialist interests. The general astonishment found brief relief in the Bolshevik success of 1917 but soon worsened into panic and depression when, instead of spreading to developed capitalist countries as the manuals predicted, the revolution was suffocated by the overall hostility of the proletariat. Faced with such significant facts, a normal brain would immediately consider correcting the theory. Perhaps the interests of the proletariat were not as antagonistic to those of the capitalists as Marx and Lenin claimed. But a Marxist brain is never normal. The Hungarian philosopher György Lukács, for example, found it perfectly natural to share his wife with someone else. Thinking with that mindset, he concluded that those who were wrong were not the theory but the proletariat. These idiots couldn't see their real interests and willingly served their enemies. They were crazy. György Lukács was normal. It was up to him, therefore, to discover who had caused proletarian insanity. A skilled detective, he quickly found the culprit: Western culture. The blend of Judeo-Christian prophecy, Roman law, and Greek philosophy was an infernal potion manufactured by the bourgeoisie to deceive the proletariat. Driven to despair by this distressing discovery, the philosopher exclaimed, "Who will save us from Western culture?" The answer came without delay. Felix Weil, another notable mind, found it perfectly logical to use the money his father had accumulated from the grain trade as a tool to destroy, along with his own domestic fortune, that of all other bourgeoisie. With this money, he founded what came to be known as the Frankfurt School, a Marxist think tank that, abandoning the illusions of a universal proletarian uprising, dedicated itself to the only viable enterprise remaining, the destruction of Western culture. In Italy, the founder of the Communist Party, Antonio Gramsci, reached a similar conclusion as he witnessed the working class betray revolutionary internationalism, massively embracing the ultranationalist variant of socialism invented by the renegade Benito Mussolini. In fact, even the Soviets no longer believed in the proletariat. Stalin recommended that Western communist parties recruit millionaires, intellectuals, and celebrities from the show business, before anyone else. Contradicted by the facts, Marxism sought revenge through self-inversion. Instead of transforming social conditions to change mentalities, it would change mentalities to transform social conditions. It was the first theory in the world to profess to demonstrate its truth through the contrary of what it said. The instruments for this soon appeared. Gramsci discovered the cultural revolution that would reform the common sense of humanity, leading it to see the martyrdom of Catholic saints as a sordid capitalist publicity maneuver and making intellectuals, instead of proletarians, the chosen revolutionary class. The thinkers from Frankfurt, especially Horkheimer, Adorno, and Marcuse, had the idea of mixing Freud and Marx, concluding that Western culture was a disease and that everyone educated within it suffered from authoritarian personality, and that the Western population should be reduced to the status of mental asylum patients and subjected to collective psychotherapy. Therefore, after classical Marxism, Soviet Marxism, and Edward Bernstein's revisionist Marxism, the first Tucano, the fourth form of Marxism was inaugurated, cultural Marxism. Since it did not speak of proletarian revolution or openly advocate any brutality, this new school was well accepted by those responsible for defending the Western culture that it professed to destroy. Expelled from Germany due to the unfair competition of Nazism, the Frankfurt School found in the USA the ideal atmosphere of freedom to destroy the society that had welcomed them. They endeavored to demonstrate that the democracy they fled to was just like the fascism that had driven them away. They named their philosophy, critical theory, because it refrained from proposing any remedy for the world's ills and sought only to destroy culture, destroy trust between individuals and groups, destroy religious faith, destroy language, destroy logical reasoning, spread an atmosphere of suspicion, confusion, and hatred everywhere. Once this objective was achieved, they claimed that suspicion, confusion, and hatred were proof of the evilness of capitalism. From France, the school received invaluable assistance from the deconstructionist method, an academic charlatanism that allows challenging all products of human intelligence as malicious tricks used by white males to oppress women, blacks, gays, and everyone else, including domestic animals and plants. The American contribution was the invention of the linguistic dictatorship of political correctness. In a few decades, cultural Marxism became the predominant influence in universities, media, show business, and editorial circles in the West. Its macabre dogmas, often unrecognized as Marxism, are foolishly accepted as supra-ideological cultural values by the business and ecclesiastical classes whose destruction is its sole and inescapable objective. It is difficult to find a novel, film, play, or textbook today where the beliefs of cultural Marxism, often unacknowledged as such, are not present with all the virulence of their slanderous and perverse content. The propagation of this influence was so vast that everywhere the old idea of tolerance has been transformed into Marcuse's liberating tolerance, total tolerance for the left, none for the right. Those who veto and boycott the dissemination of ideas they disagree with do not feel they are practicing censorship, they consider themselves exemplars of democratic tolerance. Through cultural Marxism, all of culture has become a war machine against itself, leaving no room for anything else. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. This text was taken from the article, Cultural Marxism, by Olavo de Carvalho, written in 2002.